Hello and welcome live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Gautam Roy. Coming up over the next 1 hour. India's Finance Minister announces major relief for the middle class in the Union Budget. No income tax up to 1.2 million INR under the new tax regime. New income tax slabs in Budget 2025. 30% tax only for 2.5 million INR and above annual income. 25% rate introduced for incomes between 2 to 2.5 million INR. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi hails Budget 2025, says it reflects his government's commitment to fulfill the aspirations of 140 crore Indians. The Hamas hands over 3 more Israeli hostages in a 4th round of release of captives under the first phase of the Gaza ceasefire deal. And the White House says US President Donald Trump will impose tariffs of 25% on Mexico and Canada as well as 10% on China today. First up, all the updates and the decoding of the Union Budget 2025. Well, India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presented the Union Budget 2025 in the lower house of the Indian Parliament, marking a significant milestone with a record 8th consecutive budget presentation. With focus on the middle class of the country, the FM said that the new tax regime will substantially reduce taxes of the middle class as there will be no income tax payable up to income of 1.2 million Indian rupees.
This government, under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi, has always believed in the admirable energy and ability of the middle class in nation building. In recognition of their contribution, we have periodically reduced their tax burden. Right after 2014, the nil tax slab was raised to 2.5 lakhs of rupees, which was further raised to 5 lakh rupees in 2019 and to 7 lakh rupees in 2023. This is reflective of our government's trust on the middle class taxpayers. I am now happy to announce that there will be no income tax payable up to income of 12 lakh rupees.
The Finance Minister also announced the revised tax rate structure with changed slabs and rates to benefit all taxpayers in the new tax regime.
In the new tax regime, I propose to revise tax rate structures as follows: 0 to 4 lakh rupees nil, 4.8 lakh rupees to 4 to 8 lakh rupees 5%, 8 to 12 lakh rupees 10%, 12 to 16 lakh rupees 15%, 16 to 20 lakh rupees 20%, 20 to 24 lakh rupees 25%, and above 24 lakh rupees 30%.
And Nirmala Sitharaman also said that a new tax bill will be introduced in Parliament next week.
Over the past 10 years, our government has implemented several reforms for convenience of taxpayers, such as faceless assessment, 2. Taxpayer charter, 3. Faster returns, 4. Almost 99% returns being on self-assessment, and 5. Vivad Se Vishwas scheme. Continuing these efforts, I reaffirm the commitment of the tax department to trust first, scrutinize later. I also propose to introduce the new income tax bill next week.
Also in her speech, the minister asserted that the Indian economy is the fastest growing among all developing economies. She noted that India's development track record in the past decade and structural reforms have drawn global attention.
Our economy is the fastest growing among all major economies. Our development track record for the past 10 years and structural reforms have drawn global attention. Confidence in India's capability and potential has only grown in this period. We see the next 5 years as a unique opportunity to realize Sabka Vikas, stimulating balanced growth of all regions.
The Finance Minister also underlined that this budget aims to initiate transformative reforms across 6 domains to augment growth potential and global competitiveness. The FM said that in the journey of development, reforms is the fuel.
Urban development, mining.
The budget proposals by Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will usher in a string of reforms in various sectors. This development will have a cascading domino effect on the overall economy, as the reforms will spur the growth in specific areas and act as a catalyst for the remaining sectors.
This budget aims to initiate transformative reforms across 6 domains. During the first 5 years, these will augment our growth potential and global competitiveness.
The most people-friendly part of the speech was, in fact, the announcement of a new income tax bill which will be brought in next week, reaffirming government's commitment of trust first, scrutinize later. The new income slabs are also sure to bring in loud cheer from all sections of the society. Government will forego at least a lakh crore in direct taxes as a result of new liberal direct tax proposals.
The new structure will substantially reduce the taxes of the middle class and leave more money in their hands, boosting household consumption, savings and investment.
Government has announced a light touch regulatory framework for enhanced productivity and employment.
A light touch regulatory framework based on principles and trust will unleash productivity and employment. Through this framework, we will update regulations that were made under old laws.
This feature will entail a new high-level committee on regulatory reforms which will submit recommendations within a year. Launch of an investment friendliness index for states, FSDC mechanism and Jan Vishwas Bill 2.0 to further decriminalize 100 more provisions in various laws. Financial sector reforms have also been identified. An important development will be allowing 100% FDI in the insurance sector. Further, company mergers will be streamlined and rationalized. A forum for development of pension products is also in offing. Power remains an important enabler for industry and homes alike. It plays an important part in any economy's surge northwards. Many important reforms have been promised in the power sector, with the finance minister identifying incentives in distribution sector and ushering in partnership with private sector in the critical area of nuclear energy.
For an active partnership with the private sector towards this goal, amendments to the Atomic Energy Act and the Civil Liability for Nuclear Damage Act will be taken up.
A state mining index is also among the major reform initiatives taken for the mining sector, which has the benefit of being labor intensive as well as having a domino effect on related areas. Last but not the least, government will also incentivize reforms related to the urban sector. Cumulatively, these steps on reforms in various sectors will go a long way in enhancing ease of doing business, boosting purchasing power of the common man, and providing further fillip for the economic growth of the nation. Ravi Dhiman for DD India.
Also, while presenting India's union budget, Finance Minister Sitharaman pegged the fiscal deficit target at 4.4% of the GDP for the financial year 2025-26. For 2024-25, the fiscal deficit target has been revised from 4.9% of gross domestic product to 4.8%. The budget also promises to continue the government's efforts to accelerate growth, secure inclusive development, invigorate private sector investments, uplift household sentiments and enhance spending power of India's rising middle class. Here's a report.
In a bid to continue the Indian economy's journey on course of fiscal consolidation, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman announced a 50.65 lakh crore budget, the biggest in the history of India, with an aim to maintain economic growth and keep the fiscal deficit on the declining path.
Our economy is the fastest growing among all major economies. Our development track record for the past 10 years and structural reforms have drawn global attention. Confidence in India's capability and potential has only grown in this period. We see the next 5 years as a unique opportunity to realize Sabka Vikas, stimulating balanced growth of all regions.
As per the budget estimates 2025-26, the total receipts other than borrowings is pegged at rupees 34.96 lakh crore and the total expenditure or the total size of the budget has been kept at rupees 50.65 lakh crore. The net tax receipts are estimated at rupees 28.37 lakh crore. The fiscal deficit target for 2025-26 is pegged at 4.4% of the GDP as compared to the previous year's figure of 4.8%. To finance the fiscal deficit, the net market borrowings from dated securities are estimated at rupees 11.54 lakh crore. The balance financing is expected to come from small savings and other sources. The gross market borrowings are estimated at rupees 14.82 lakh crore. In order to maintain the growth momentum of the Indian economy, the capital expenditure or capex has been kept at around rupees 15.5 lakh crores, an upward revision from the previous year's figure of rupees 10.18 lakh crore. In the budget 2025-26, the sectors that have received the largest budgetary allocations are Defence 4.91 lakh crore, Rural Development rupees 2.66 lakh crore, Home Affairs 2.33 lakh crores, Agriculture rupees 1.71 lakh crore, Education rupees 1.28 lakh crore, Health rupees 98,000 crore and Urban Development 96,000 crore.
In this budget, the proposed development measures span 10 broad areas focusing on Garib, Youth, Annadata and Nari, spurring agricultural growth and productivity, building rural prosperity and resilience, taking everyone together on an inclusive growth path, boosting manufacturing and furthering Make in India, supporting MSMEs, enabling employment-led development, investing in people, economy and innovation.
The budget 2025-26 has been crafted with a special focus on agriculture, micro, small and medium enterprises or MSMEs, an investment-friendly environment and a major thrust on export-oriented economy, which will be fueled by reforms guided by the spirit of inclusivity with a clear target of mission Viksit Bharat or Developed India. Amit Mukherjee for DD India.
And we play out some reactions from union ministers, including even Prime Minister Modi, and when we get it. But let me bring in our guests at the moment to talk about this budget. Now that we've had some time to digest it, we have Amitendu Parit, senior economist, joining us from Singapore, and Sunil Arora is also with us. He's National Head Taxation, ASA and Associates. Welcome to you both. First, let me come to you, Mr. Arora, because Everybody, I guess, wants to know about what changes have been brought in to the income tax regime, the new and old, which should one go for now? Probably the old income tax regime is breathing its last. But what are the changes that have been brought in by the finance minister in the new income tax regime, about the rebate as well as the new slab? What do they really mean for the everyday taxpayer, the salaried person?
Well, I think it's a very valid viewpoint. I think we should first talk about, I think in the earlier report also you mentioned about the new income tax bill that is going to be introduced next week by the finance minister. Now, please understand the history. The history has been that this bill has been in talks since 2009. When this government came into power in 2014, they set up a committee from 2014 to 2000.
There was talk about direct tax as well.
Yeah. So this bill is going to be introduced next week. Now, this bill has a very specific provision about how to simplify the taxpayers, the way they pay taxes, the way income tax legislation is to be eased. And whatever new regime that you see right now is a step forward in that direction only. So the way I see it, if you see the way a new regime was brought into being 3 years ago, 2-3 years ago, when it was optional, today, when you go and file your tax return, this new regime is a default regime, right? So to answer your question, is this beneficial to you? Most certainly, this is the default regime that applies to you. Now, the finance minister said very clearly today, incomes up to 12 lakhs of rupees 1.2 million are exempt. This is a very, very welcome move. This obviously leaves a lot of money, disposable income in the hands of the taxpayers. Now, something that's a bit hidden in the budget, but something that also helps you in leaving a bit more income, disposable income in your hands, is the rationalization of the limits on which TDS has to be done. So, for example, TDS on interest that you get from bank, especially for senior citizens, the limit today is that the TDS will be done at 50,000 rupees of income. That has been enhanced from 50,000 to 1 lakh. Now, that also leaves a lot of money, disposable income in your hands. For others, it has been increased from 40,000 to 50,000. Dividend income, 5,000 to 10,000. Rental income, TDS on rental income, 2,40,000, 20,000 a month to 50,000 a month, 6 lakhs. So that certainly leaves a lot of disposable income in your hands. So my bet will be go with the new tax regime.
All right. And as far as the old tax regime is concerned, we can sort of conclude that it's going to be a thing of the past, if not already, very soon.
The way it's moving ahead, yes. I think there is absolutely no doubt about that.
All right. Now, Mr. Palit, what brings up a question related to these tax changes, income tax, personal income tax changes, is the fact that the government is foregoing a substantial amount of money. It's more than 1.1 lakh crore rupees. Does that sort of worry you in any way, or do you think the government has done its math very well and it's going to make up the shortfall from revenue coming in from other areas or reduce expenditure?
I think that's a valid point, but when we look at that point, we can obviously come into it with diverse perspectives. One of them is the perspective that you highlight, that there is a fairly large chunk of revenue being foregone by the government. And as a result of that, there is going to be some pressure on the resources for the treasury, which is in a sense going to impact a large number of, say, developmental budget programs that are on the anvil. But I think it's important to look at the context in which this foregoing decision has been taken by the government, and one of which is the fact that today, after a couple of years, the Indian economy is expected to go into a lower than trend rate of growth of around 6.4%, number one, which means that this is that part of an economic cycle where the government needs to come out with an expansionary fiscal policy. So to that extent, an income tax relaxation and bringing in more purchasing power for the people, increasing their affordability and ability to spend, is an important consideration. So I think that has really influenced the government decision in one. But there's another thing. I think it's also taking a look at the totality, and it's not just the income taxes that we look at in this budget. We have also seen significant changes allowed in the area of customs duty. And these customs duty changes have all been introduced with the intention of bringing down the cost of production, especially for exporters and MSMEs. Now, what that would mean is that this is also an incentive, a systemic policy incentive being given to these producers and exporters to enhance their production and obtain larger shares of the global export market. Now, if that happens, then there is a possibility that the revenues come back to the economy through larger foreign exchange earnings and greater industrial domestic turnover, which also influences the GST collections. So I think the calculation has more or less been based on what one can call calculated risk projections. And given the context that the economy is riding on at this point in time, this is perhaps something which is not an unanticipated or not unseen through risk.
All right. So you think it's been well weighed. Sunil Arora, if I could again come to you just to understand, because there's still a lot of confusion in people's mind as to how these new changes, the 12 lakh rebate, which was 7.5 lakh earlier in the new tax regime, and these new tax slabs again in the new regime, nothing's changed for the old one, right? Everything changes for the new regime. And to what extent does it change? How much would a person save depending on how much that person earns? Could you quickly explain that to us if it's possible?
So I think if you see the slabs, earlier there were 6 slabs, now there are 7 slabs. If you read between the lines, if you read these slabs, there is a slab number 2 and number 3, the slab that takes you to the 12 lakh income. So slab number 2 says 4 lakh to 8 lakh, 5% income. That means a tax of about 20,000 rupees. Slab number 3 takes you from 8 lakhs to 12 lakhs. That means a 10% tax. That means additional tax of 40,000 rupees. Now that makes a total of 60,000 rupees. Now what the government has cleverly done is, rather than tinkering too much with these slabs, they have said, if you have an additional tax burden of up to 60,000 rupees, we are going to give you a relief of up to 60,000 rupees. So effectively, your 12 lakh income, the tax on 12 lakh income, more so for salaried, because for salaried you have the standard deduction also. So for salaried it becomes 12 lakhs plus 75,000. So what they're saying is, if you have the 12 lakh income, we will give you rebate enough for you to not pay any tax on the 12 lakhs. So that's the real math behind it. You don't see any...
And what happens when you earn even a rupee about 12 lakh rupees?
You are taxed at 15%.
15% for the part of your salary which is between 12 and 16 lakh?
Which is above 12 lakhs and up to 16 lakhs.
Okay,
yes.
and below that it's according to the slabs?
Below that is according to the slabs, yes.
Okay, so if a person is, say, earning 50 lakh rupees, then what is that person's tax liability?
So then you obviously fall into the highest tax bracket, and one needs to do the math to understand how the tax would. But on a high level basis, 26 lakhs will be taxed at 30%, because that's the difference between 50 lakhs and 24 lakhs, and the income up to 24 lakhs is going to be taxed on these slab rates.
So would you say that a person, if a person is earning above 24 lakh rupees, if that person was previously in the old income tax regime, would it be beneficial for that person to shift to the new income tax regime now?
I think you should easily save about 80,000 to 100,000 rupees, maybe more than that if you include surcharge and cess also.
Okay. Let me bring in Mr. Parit again. Mr. Parit, as a person who assesses the economy in every aspect of it, especially the macro level, what really gives you satisfaction in terms of how things have been continued to ensure that India remains on that or returns to the high growth path? Because we've slightly slowed down, although we still remain the fastest growing large economy, developing economy in the world. But what gives you the most satisfaction? What still remains a concern for you?
I think I will highlight 2 aspects of this budget, which I think are promising areas of focus. I don't intend to say that these will necessarily mean that India comes back to a high growth trajectory in that sense. But I think what I'll insist on is that there are 2 areas. One of them is the MSMEs and the other is exports. These 2 are areas which on an average, we don't get to see being covered with as much of care and sensitivity as they have been done in the current budget. And I'm choosing my words quite carefully over here, because when we look at the articulation of, let us say, the MSMEs, and the recognition of the fact that their investment and turnover limits are going to get changed, they are going to be provided a credit guarantee cover, especially the exporter ones. There is an implicit recognition of the fact that the MSMEs have been very important to the economic prospects of the country. And perhaps to that extent, the policy ecosystem which goes behind their nurturing needs to be that much more supportive and complementing in their efforts. So they are contributing between themselves almost half of the country's exports. Now, if the MSMEs themselves are put in a position where their cost of compliance comes down, there is a light touch regulatory system, and at the same time, they are being brought into the specificities of industrial production, making them capable of joining industrial value chains, supply chains globally, then it's a win-win combination for the economy. And this is precisely where I want to also emphasize upon the fact that today the Indian trade scenario, looked at it from a global perspective, is encountering quite a few unpredictable issues. We have had issues from the past. The Ukraine war continues. The dollar is exceptionally high. This is making it very challenging for exporters to invoice their products in dollar. India is trying to shift more towards trade in Indian currency, but that has its structural limitations. So at this point in time, the kind of efforts that have been brought in for encouraging exports, and let me pick out two of this. First is the fact that there's a national framework which is being proposed for global capability centers. And as we have seen, the latest trends show that the global capability centers have been instrumental behind Indian service exports exceeding the manufacturing exports.
Right.
And they're really also playing a very significant role in pushing India up the ladder as a technology and innovation hub, integrating India into the service value chains, and also generating domestic jobs. So I think if that kind of a framework comes in, where the GCCs are being enough space to move out in various parts of the country and not get congested in a handful of cities, we are definitely expecting to see a much robust growth of services exports from the country, along with concomitant benefits. And the final point over here, which I'd like to mention, is that for a very long time, there has been this complaint that when one looks at India's customs duty structure, it tends to suffer from what we call the inverted duty, legacy issue, where the customs duties on imported inputs are much higher than those on the final products, which completely overlooks the fact that in many cases, exporters need to actually import inputs for assembling their products, and that is where an inverted duty structure makes them lose their competitiveness. I'm very happy to note that in the current budget, this problem has been substantively addressed with an effort to improve India's export competitiveness and bring down overall cost of production. So that is why, going back to what I said in the beginning, I think these two taken together are very promising areas of focus. Not that they are going to probably generate the benefits immediately within a period of 6 months or 3 quarters, but they are certainly steps in the right direction.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Made some valid points there, Mr. Palit. And when we come back, we'll also introduce Anil Padmanabhan, senior economic journalist, who's joined us in our studio. Thanks, Anil. But we have to take a very quick break for our sponsors. Do join us in just a bit. We'll talk about the rural economy as well.
पर लोन लेने के लिए खुद का हैवी मार्जिन लगाना पड़ता है।
80% तक का बिजनेस लोन मिलेगा, हाँ? वो भी कोलैटरल फ्री।
अच्छा,
5 करोड़ तक बैंक ऑफ बड़ौदा संभाल लेगा। बड़ौदा महिला स्वावलंबन लोन, तो शुरू कीजिए अपना ड्रीम बिजनेस।
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
पर लोन लेने के लिए खुद का हैवी मार्जिन लगाना पड़ता है।
80% तक का बिजनेस लोन मिलेगा, हाँ? वो भी कोलैटरल फ्री।
अच्छा,
5 करोड़ तक बैंक ऑफ बड़ौदा संभाल लेगा।
लेकिन बिजनेस शुरू हो गया तो इन दोनों कौन संभालेगा?
मम्मी, तुम बिजनेस संभालो, रोहन को मैं संभाल लूंगी।
बड़ौदा महिला स्वावलंबन लोन, तो शुरू कीजिए अपना ड्रीम बिजनेस।
पर लोन लेने के लिए खुद का हैवी मार्जिन लगाना पड़ता है।
80% तक का बिजनेस लोन मिलेगा, हाँ? वो भी कोलैटरल फ्री।
अच्छा,
5 करोड़ तक बैंक ऑफ बड़ौदा संभाल लेगा। बड़ौदा महिला स्वावलंबन लोन, तो शुरू कीजिए अपना ड्रीम बिजनेस।
पर लोन लेने के लिए खुद का हैवी मार्जिन लगाना पड़ता है।
80% तक का बिजनेस लोन मिलेगा, हाँ? वो भी कोलैटरल फ्री।
अच्छा,
5 करोड़ तक बैंक ऑफ बड़ौदा संभाल लेगा।
लेकिन बिजनेस शुरू हो गया तो इन दोनों कौन संभालेगा?
मम्मी, तुम बिजनेस संभालो, रोहन को मैं संभाल लूंगी।
बड़ौदा महिला स्वावलंबन लोन, तो शुरू कीजिए अपना ड्रीम बिजनेस।
पर लोन लेने के लिए खुद का हैवी मार्जिन लगाना पड़ता है।
80% तक का बिजनेस लोन मिलेगा, हाँ? वो भी कोलैटरल फ्री।
अच्छा,
5 करोड़ तक बैंक ऑफ बड़ौदा संभाल लेगा। बड़ौदा महिला स्वावलंबन लोन, तो शुरू कीजिए अपना ड्रीम बिजनेस।
Welcome back. You're watching DD News Hour. I'm Gautam Roy. Now, as India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presented the Union Budget in the Lok Sabha, Union ministers have hailed the budget and have turned it growth-oriented. Listen in.
Well, I think it's a complete budget. It's a budget that has been announced keeping in mind the vision of developed a nation, Viksit Bharat.
I think it's an excellent budget. I would rate it 10 out of 10. I think she's covered all the important sections of the society. She's given a big tax break to the middle class, and middle class and below. She's taken care of. She's given big relief to all of them. So I think the whole she's covered 99% of the population in that. So I'm sure they're going to be all extremely happy with this.
So it's a common people budget, and it's pro poor, pro women, and pro farmers, and pro youth. And especially the special concentration was given on the middle class. So I believe that this budget will create new job facilities.
Undoubtedly, this announcement which was made today to enhance the tax limits, it is going to give a big boost and big relief to the middle income group, and simultaneously it is going to give a big boost in the GDP.
देश के इतिहास का एक बहुत महत्वपूर्ण बजट निर्मला जी ने आज पार्लियामेंट में पेश किया है। ये जो बजट की विशेषता ये है कि हमारी इकोनॉमी को एक्सेलरेट करने वाला ये बजट है। जहां तक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को हर समय वित्त मंत्री प्राथमिकता देते हैं, इस समय भी हमारा बजट बढ़ा है, जिसके कारण इंफ्रा रोड सेक्टर में इसका बहुत बड़ा फायदा होगा।
ये मध्यम वर्ग के लिए वरदान है। कोई कल्पना नहीं करता था कि इनकम टैक्स में छूट की सीमा 12 लाख रुपए तक हो जाएगी, और इसके लिए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद वित्त मंत्री जी को और विशेषकर प्रधानमंत्री जी को।
And we've got some more reactions coming in from the industry as well. Piruz Khambata, Managing Director of Rasna Private Limited, has stressed that helping the MSMEs and startups would add to the overall growth of the Indian economy. He's also hailed the budget allocation for food processing, which plays a significant role in farm revenue and employment creation.
If we simplify laws and we help the MSMEs and startups, I think it will prosper. And once they become part of the ecosystem, overall growth will also happen. Setting up the Institute for Food Processing is a good positive move. Having export missions to identify crops for export is a good thing. In tourism also, to identify districts where we can have more tourism clusters, especially in religious areas. So these are all the things, if you put together, will all add to the growth. That is my belief.
Well, Sanjeev Puri, the president of Confederation of Indian Industry, CII, hailed the Union Budget 25-26 as a roadmap for a Viksit Bharat or developed India. Adding further, he said that the budget focuses on inclusive and sustainable development. DD India's Deepika Mahato has spoken with the CII president. Listen in.
In the past decade, if we see, every budget has focused towards India's goal to become a developed nation by the year 2047. Looking at this budget, what do you have to say about it?
It is, I think, on the same path. It is really focusing on the pillars for India to achieve the dream of Viksit Bharat. And it's again focusing on inclusive and sustainable development. The budget has focused on several sectors that are labor intensive, very important from an economic point of view, to boost economic activity and therefore generate employment, which in itself, over time will improve consumption and create further investments, a virtuous cycle. Focus also is there on investments in the economy, whether it's human capital development, whether it's urban infrastructure, whether it's around innovation and getting India to partake in the sunrise sectors. A lot of positives there, and a very strong message on the government's commitment towards ease of doing business and cost of doing business.
A major focus has also been on the eastern part of the nation, and especially a very huge boost to the northeastern states as well. How do you see that?
I think given the phase of development these regions are, I think focus is very much required there.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So there you heard Mr. Sanjeev Puri talking about India's budget for the current year and how it has been really progressive this time. With camera person Sunny Kalra, this is Deepika reporting for DD India.
And TKL Industries MD and CEO Vivek Bhatia has hailed the union budget as well, saying that the government has taken a lot of steps to ensure that the industry benefits, taken through measures in the country's economy growing as well. He also praised the increased allocation for green energy in budget 2025.
How do you see India's growth and its progress towards becoming a developed nation by the year 2047 specifically?
Well, it's no secret that India is the fastest growing major economy in the world, and I think consistently over the last 10 years we have seen a lot of positive measures being taken by the government to make sure that we remain steadfast on this high growth journey. And I think that's very important for us to realize our dreams of being a developed nation by 2047.
And there's also been a focus on public-private partnership, and especially when we talk about becoming a developed nation and taking everybody together. And when we talk about green energy as well, the green sector, how have you seen the increasing boost in that?
Well, I think this is a very positive budget. Firstly, I must congratulate our finance minister. Everybody after the budget announcement is smiling, especially on what she has done on the personal income tax side. And mind you, she has made all these positive investment announcements while keeping fiscal deficit in control, and we are looking towards 4.4%. And the government has always done better, tends to do better than what they're announcing. When it comes to the core sector and sectors like green and sustainable energy, I think there's a very interesting thing she's talked about, which is improving the grid infrastructure and supporting that, and also for the DISCOMs, to get more funding and financing into that sector. So I think with T&D improving, that allows for more uptake of green energy into the national grid. and that will definitely ultimately boost the whole sector. Then on the other side, when you have suggestions for lithium and the battery ecosystem, which will then get a boost, then we are also talking about continued incentives and support for electrolyzers and green hydrogen. So I think that is a very positive, for the overall green economy.
And let's now take you back to our guests. We have with us Amitendu Palit, senior economist, joining us from Singapore. Sunil Arora is with us, National Head Taxation, ASA Associates, and Anil Padmanabhan is with us in our studio, senior economic journalist. Anil, if I could come to you and ask you about the industry, particularly we've just heard from Ficci and CI and some others as well. They seem pretty pleased with the budget. Do you think there is reason enough for them to feel that as far as their businesses are concerned, they can go about it with less regulatory burden, compliance burdens in the coming days? There will be more ease of doing business?
Oh, definitely, Gautam. Ahead of the presentation of the budget, a key pain point for industry was exactly this regulatory burden and the tax overreach. So if you recall, the FM made two specific comments. One, she said soft touch with the regulation and trust first, scrutinize later with regards to the tax part of it. So if you take the two together and the decision to set up a regulatory reforms committee to review all the regulations in the non-financial sector, then set up an investment friendliness index for states, which means if you don't tick the boxes, you will not be considered investment friendly. Then the decriminalization of legal provisions, taking it further, they did it last time too. So you pull all these together, there's a clear instance of ease of doing business that they are signaled. Now the problem with this is that the central government, to its credit, has not been found wanting on this, excepting in the parts of tax overreach, which she has signaled today that they need to correct that. But the challenge is going to be to walk this talk at the state level, because that's a different story. But they presumably they got a plan B which has not been disclosed in the budget from the signal that the FM said that for tourist destinations they will be giving a PLI scheme to incentivize tourist destinations to be developed, and states will be awarded for cleanliness, hygiene, connectivity, etc. So if you all in all, ease of doing business, the government has moved halfway into meeting the economic survey's very clear comment that get out of the way, which is what the economic survey said yesterday.
Yes.
So the government has gone halfway to meet the economic survey on its suggestion.
And there's a promise of more to unfold as we go along because of the report that will come in from this committee that has been...
Also, the next step should be GST. See, it's for last nearly 2 years, they have been debating on how and when to rationalize the bands. So in principle, they've taken a call. But now with this budget having set the foundation, I hope the GST Council now meets.
The GST is out of the purview of the budget.
That's why I said, after taking the cue from the budget, I hope the GST Council meets and carries through the efforts which rationalization, which is long overdue, which will be a huge improvement in ease of doing business.
Okay. I'll come to our other guests as well, but let's just play out how Prime Minister Narendra Modi has reacted to this union budget. He's thanked the Finance Minister for a people's budget and said that this budget fulfills the dreams of the common people. Listen in.
आज भारत की विकास यात्रा का एक महत्वपूर्ण पड़ाव है। ये 140 करोड़ भारतीयों की आकांक्षाओं का बजट है। ये हर भारतीय के सपनों को पूरा करने वाला बजट है। हमने कई सेक्टर्स युवाओं के लिए खोल दिए हैं। सामान्य नागरिक विकसित भारत के मिशन को ड्राइव करने वाला है। ये बजट एक फोर्स मल्टीप्लायर है। ये बजट सेविंग्स को बढ़ाएगा, इन्वेस्टमेंट को बढ़ाएगा, कंजम्पशन को बढ़ाएगा और ग्रोथ को भी तेजी से बढ़ाएगा। मैं वित्त मंत्री निर्मला सीतारमण जी और उनकी पूरी टीम को इस जनता जनार्दन का बजट, पीपल्स का बजट, इसके लिए बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूं। साथियों, आमतौर पर बजट का फोकस इस बात पर रहता है कि सरकार का खजाना कैसे भरेगा, लेकिन ये बजट उससे बिल्कुल उल्टा है। लेकिन ये बजट देश के नागरिकों की जेब कैसे भरेगी, देश के नागरिकों की बचत कैसे बढ़ेगी और देश के नागरिक विकास के भागीदार कैसे बनेंगे, ये बजट इसकी एक बहुत मजबूत नींव रखता है। इस बजट में रिफॉर्म की दिशा में महत्वपूर्ण कदम उठाए गए हैं। न्यूक्लियर एनर्जी में प्राइवेट सेक्टर को बढ़ावा देने का निर्णय बहुत ही ऐतिहासिक है। ये आने वाले समय में सिविल न्यूक्लियर एनर्जी का बड़ा योगदान देश के विकास में सुनिश्चित करेगा।
And we've got some more reactions coming in. DD India's Tapas Bhattacharya has spoken about the budget's potential impact with Jyoti Wij, Director General of Ficci, exploring how these measures could transform the developmental landscape.
Ma'am, from Ficci's perspective, when you talk about at the fag end of Nirmala Sitharaman ma'am's budget, she mentioned that it's a huge push for the middle class when she announced the no tax for till 12 lakhs. How do you see that and how do you see that actually having a repercussion in a circular economy?
So in this economy, I think demand was something which we had seen was a bit sluggish. I think that also had a bearing on the growth rates in Q1, Q2. So this is a huge boost which has been given by the government, and so is obviously one of the recommendations that we as Ficci have been giving to the government, and we are very, very pleased to see this happen.
Two more important things I want to ask. One is about medical tourism that Finance Minister has announced. The other part is a major push towards the manufacturing sector. That's another thing that one believes that will catapult India towards the Viksit Bharat by 2047.
No, absolutely. I think if we have to go towards Viksit Bharat and the self-reliant goal that the Prime Minister Modi has been talking about, manufacturing has to be the backbone of the economy, where we have lost the steam in the past, and this government has been pursuing that in a very focused way. And in light of that, the manufacturing mission should most definitely bring back this goal in a very, very focused way. But more importantly, I think they're looking at employment focused sectors, which is the toys, the leather, the textile, the handicrafts, all of that. That's what can actually help in the employment part of the whole the piece which has been missing in the economy, which has been really disturbing everybody. So that's very important. And manufacturing, as I said, will also help in bringing the self-reliance in the country.
Medical tourism also is a
medical tourism, again, I think we've been promoting. We have very good health facilities in the country. We have a lot of medical people coming in, but to identify those gaps and try and plug them and make it more seamless, I think is a very, very good step.
Let me now go back to my panel of guests. I have Amitendu Palit with us, senior economist, joining us from Singapore, Sunil Arora, National Head Taxation, ASA and Associates, and Anil Padmanabhan, senior economic journalist in our studio. If I could come to you, Mr. Palit, again and talk about what do you think is really standing out as far as giving a boost to the rural economy is concerned in this budget? The agricultural sector has been in focus, a lot of focus on Bihar as well. A lot of agrarian activity there will benefit from the provisions of the budget as well, do you think?
I think the agriculture sector, there's no denying the fact that even if it's not mentioned that way in the previous budgets or the other budgets that we have seen, agriculture is always a priority insofar as the union budget done by the Ministry of Finance and allocation of resources and funding is concerned. So that said, This particular year, I think the budget has been a little bit more mindful about the fact that agriculture today is subject to a certain variety of challenges which were not existing maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Let's, for example, extreme weather events tend to impact agriculture much more these days. There are issues surrounding water adequacy. There are issues surrounding agri-tech. There are issues surrounding innovation. And most importantly, I think the information that is available with farmers in terms of the patterns that they need to adjust with, the kind of strategies they need to prepare, it's more of an idea of strategic preparedness on part of the agriculture producers. That I think is an important issue. And to that extent, I think the budget has made an interesting beginning. And let me also try to bring this in with the fact that this is a budget where there are these arguably 4 engines that have been put out: agriculture, investment, MSMEs, and exports we spoke of earlier. I think there's an interesting element to this budget that there has been an effort to somehow synergize these 4 engines together, because it's not always that we get to see budgets where this synergy element is visible. Very often one tends to see that the focus and priorities are running in silos. But this is for once where one does tend to see that there is a connection, let's say, for example, between the agriculture focus and the fisheries sector and the textile sector and the improvement sector and so on and so forth. So I think that element is worth noting, and that is something, again, which is purposeful.
Yes. And Anil, if I could ask you in terms of how this budget has also been chalked out for even the sections of society which have not really benefited to that extent as was expected. If you talk about women, if you talk about creating more opportunities for the youth, and even startups which have had a lot of resources being devoted as far as fund of fund is concerned. There's talk of another fund of fund, and there's a focus on deep tech as well. Do you feel that this will also there's an exploration for a deep tech fund of fund as well? So do you feel that these will also give a lot of fillip to the kind of economic activities that we're looking to employ our people in the coming years?
Oh, absolutely, Gautam. I would in fact highlight one instance from the budget which answers all your queries, which is, it may not be, headline news in most media, but the government's FM's decision for Makana, to set up a Makana board in Bihar. Most people don't realize that Makana has grown, most of India's Makana has grown in 3 districts in Bihar. And the farmers there get nothing. It's exported out to neighboring states like Karnataka, and then value added and export. Now they have decided to take growth to the people there. So the whole idea is you create a Makana board, and today Makana is a superfood, as you know. A decade ago, none of us knew Makana, but a few of us, did. So that tells you that the entire approach is to make it inclusive, whether it's youth, women, or those outside. In fact, the PM's remarks were very interesting. He said that this is a budget to create new stakeholders. You see, if you step back and look, those who are not part of the system, at one time India had about 40% poor in this country. So they were outside the system looking in. Today, 400 million people have been given a bank account in the last 10 years. So they are now inside looking out. So moves like Makana and all these other initiatives they have taken to include all the demographic segments you mentioned do contribute in that fashion.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us and talking about it. Anil Padmanabhan and Amintendu Palit as well, joining us from Singapore to talk about these vital budget provisions that are expected to take India further on where the quest to reach the goal of becoming a developed nation by 2047 is concerned. Thank you for joining us for the moment. This special look into the budget will continue with my colleague Ramesh Ramachandran in the next 1 hour of the broadcasting here on DD India. For now, thank you for joining us for the moment. And that's all we have for this edition of DD India News Hour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. And for those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India's mobile app. It's available on both Android and iOS. You can scan the QR code that will appear on the screen as I speak. Well, scan that QR code and download the app now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Gautam Roy, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.